Hey, what's up? It's Renee, musician, sociologist. So, a little bit more about my story. And by the way, if you guys could like and subscribe and please share out these videos, that would be really helpful for me. Share it out with someone who needs it. A little bit more about my story. So, I was surrounded by Masonic people, with people who were into the dark arts, with psychopaths, narcissistic sociopaths, gang stalked heavily at one point, had to deal with a lot of bizarre, supernatural, and negative things happening and occurring. And it's been a long time. I make these tapes because I desperately want to help people so they don't have to go through some of these things, but more importantly, so they don't have to, when they encounter these people, to where they know what to do. They know how to get out and not have to be harmed. You know, every single year, women go missing, right? And by the way, I escaped 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. Unscathed. Very lucky, 3 times. I was told that, by one of them actually, that one of the things that they look for is people that have certain spiritual gifts. So there may be something to a lot of the chosen ones, etc. They look for people that have certain spiritual gifts. And they also look for people that have certain energies. So if you're high vibrational, you may want to, part of the reason why I was able to get out of these situations is because I had studied quite a bit about dark psychology, psychopathy, sociology, body language, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotism, lots of stuff on metaphysics. I'm also very intuitive, etc. And that's the only way that I was able to get out of some of these situations. I try to keep things light on here because I know that many people have not experienced these things. But at the same time, I am trying to also be as transparent as possible about this stuff. But it's important to have the knowledge and have the information. Because for narcissistic psychopaths, they don't rely on, how do I describe it? For narcissistic psychopaths, they use all of this stuff. They read body language, they use NLP, they use hypnotism, they use a series of manipulation techniques, and they rely on the fact that you probably don't have the information, you don't know anything about what's going on. Let me give you an example. And I had one of them try to do this to me before. This is not an uncommon technique at all. So the guy asked me to tell a story about something fun in my childhood. I can't remember how the topic came up. And tell me about this or tell me about that. What was your favorite moment of this or that or something like that? And so I began to tell him the story. And as I'm telling him the story, I'm reminiscing on it. I'm reflecting on it. It's putting me in a really good mood. And I'm talking about it, and I'm, getting a little nostalgic. I'm looking at, the images in my head about what happened and going through the memories. And as I'm doing this, telling him the story, and you know how people get, you're telling a story. I noticed that he kept rubbing his hand on his pelvis area. He was fully clothed, but he kept rubbing his hand on his pelvis area. And every time I kind of ignored it, and I went back to telling my story, and when I would laugh or when I would smile, telling the story, he would rub his hand on his pelvis area. And I'm like, oh, wait, bing. And I told him, I'm like, you're using an NLP technique on me right now where you do X, Y, and Z, huh? And he's like, yeah, and he laughed it off. So what that technique does is they try to get you to neurologically associate your happiness and your joy with their crotch by touching on their crotch while you're telling the story. That makes you happy and brings you joy. Yeah, this is a quick little technique. That's just one. There are thousands of techniques like this when you're dealing with these manipulative predators. And had not paid attention to that and knew about this stuff, then he would have been able to further manipulate me. And this was a difficult one to get rid of, by the way. This narcissistic guy. But that's just one. So, he was one of the less dangerous ones. He wasn't dangerous at all. That guy was just a grandiose narcissist who wanted to be worshipped and didn't care how he got it. He didn't care what kind of person he had to be. There was almost like there was a part of his brain missing, or a part of him that was missing, that didn't have empathy, right? Like most grandiose narcissists that didn't think, oh, this might hurt this person, or that might be unfair, or that might be negative. They didn't care. But yeah, so I was alienated. I was ostracized. I was, one by one, guys who were into these negative things would approach me, pretending to be my friend, asking me different questions, trying to get information, and trying to do devious things, negative things. So I don't know if any of you guys have went through this, but yeah, this tape is more about gangstalking. It's more about, I don't like using that term. I actually think that when it comes to things such as gangstalking, or such as dealing with organized efforts to backstab, betray, to do negative and harmful things, I think it's kind of important to not focus on, I think it's important to avoid some of those topics a little bit, because you can easily get put into a box and they'll place labels on people and isolate and ridicule those people even more. But let me give you a great example of that. So you have certain athletes who maybe made $80, $100 million over the lifetime of their career, but they are made to look like, to the public eye, like they're partiers, like they're drinkers, like they're social deviants, like they're crazy. And that may not be true. Maybe they only go out twice a month or twice a year, but the way the photographs are taken, the way it's staged, it's made to look like by outside people that, oh, they're just being reckless. Look at them spending all of this money. Look at them acting crazy. They're on drugs. They're using substances, whatever. And that might have just been one night. Right? But what happens is there might be an organized effort behind their back to take all of their money. And it's happened to many, many, many rappers and people in other industries. There's an organized effort to take their money. And then when it's taken from them, it's put out into the public, oh, they just wasted it away. They were just sloppy. Don't listen to them. They use substances. They're just crazy. They didn't know what they were doing. And people just sweep it under the rug like, yeah, They were just reckless. That's all. So yes, it is. So I think it is important to avoid certain terms and certain things, because do people get placed into a box? Yeah. And in order to prevent that from happening, you can speak openly to me, but yeah, be careful who you share some of this information about, or information with, I should say. Like the thing I told you about the guy who was doing NLP on me. Now with him, I told him that, but in certain cases, I would just observe it and say, oh, okay, yeah, you don't want to necessarily unmask them all the time. That can be risky, to unmask a person who's a psychopath or a narcissistic psychopath. But what happens is when you unmask a narcissist, simply put, usually they'll start lying their behind off. Other times they will confess everything to you because they get a sense of joy, or they're glib, like they're proud of it. They're proud of the fact that they were able to get away with certain things and do certain things, and they're able to manipulate. They're proud of it. So a lot of times a narcissist might confess to you everything. Other times, if they're on like if they're a pathological liar, they'll just start lying, the lies won't make sense. Psychopaths will deny everything. With psychopaths, it's all about denying everything. So they will not tell you anything. Instead, they'll gaslight, or they will make up an entire story or stage something to make it look like it totally was not what it is. And then if you're talking about sociopaths, yeah, I wouldn't recommend unmasking a sociopath at all. They're very unstable, and they can be a lot more dangerous. How do you know the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath? I might go into that into detail in the future if you're interested. It's a little bit tricky sometimes because with some of these disorders, they're overlapping. Narcissist, psychopath, sociopath. Some of them overlap a little bit depending on the one you're dealing with. There might be a person that's highly narcissistic but does not belong on the sociopathic or psychopathic scale at all. Grandiose narcissist. I'll give an example of that. And if you guys are fans, sorry, Kanye West. From what I can see, he's a grandiose narcissist, but he's not a psychopath and he's not a sociopath. He's just a grandiose narcissist. He's not going to harm anybody. He's not going to, their way of doing things is a little bit different. But then you have other ones where it's overlapping. And those are your narcissistic psychopaths and your narcissistic sociopaths who... And then also, of course, you have people that are just simply psychopaths or simply sociopaths. So it can get a little bit complicated sometimes when we're talking about like, well, how do you know the difference between this one or that one? But with the psychopath, you're going to notice they are kind of uncanny. Yeah, I don't want to go into this too much because this is kind of a long topic. How can you tell if somebody is a psychopath? But what I do want to leave you with, because I want to leave you with something helpful and I want to leave you with some information that you can use right away. Use your intuition. Watch people's actions carefully. Look at how people are treating you. Look at how people are, when I say treating you, look at, I'm not saying like study them, but the biggest thing that you can do when dealing with a narcissist or when dealing with a narcissistic psychopath or sociopath is detach from your emotions. You have to detach from your emotions, at least when dealing with that person until you figure it out. You have to detach from your emotions. Doesn't mean it's permanent or it's forever, but take a step back and analyze them and watch them, and just when you take the emotions out of it, just look at everything for what it is. Don't assume anything, like don't assume any goodwill on their part or good intentions. Just look at the behaviors, look at the actions, look at what they do, listen to what they say. Because if they are a narcissist or a narcissistic psychopath, that's the only domain they actually live in. They live in the domain of they study you, they watch you, they listen to what you say, and based on all of this information, they manipulate. And so you have to detach from your emotions in order to sit back and say, okay, wait, what's going on with this person? And then everything will become really clear. The lies, the manipulation, the inconsistencies, all of it will become really clear if they are a narcissist or a narcissistic psychopath. It's going to be pretty obvious. All right, so I'll talk to you later. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you for hanging out. And yeah, let me know what you'd like to discuss more in the future. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for hanging out. And if you are dealing with a personality type like one of the ones I was describing, you will get through it. You will get through it. I'll talk to you later. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.